Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again for another episode, and you're in for a double treat today because we have back with us Gina Cotner, the CEO and founder of Athena Executive Services. Gina, first of all, welcome back.
Great to be back, Tom.
It happens occasionally, but it's rare than the middle of a podcast. I tell my guests, sorry, you're coming back. And I did. We had such a good time on our last episode. I had originally thought Gina was going to talk to us from some different perspectives, but it turned out it was our perspectives, i.e., the compliance community. She said a lot of great stuff about leadership, about being in an organization, about culture, how she thinks through things that compliance officers do every day. So I thought maybe we could explore things like accountability, delegation, root cause analysis, obviously leadership. And she graciously agreed to do so. With that incredibly long-winded introduction, I will say again, welcome back.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
So you had some really interesting thoughts around root cause analysis, but in leadership. RCA is something we talk about in compliance a lot, but could you start off by telling us your reasons why you think a root cause analysis can be so critical in identifying any recurring issues in an organization, even if they're not legal violations or even policy violations?
Yeah, I think none of us, like you said, no matter what it is, we don't want issues to be reoccurring. So at the most basic level, we want issues to stop and certainly not be recurring. And issues in and of themselves are not fundamentally a problem. But if they are recurring, okay, now that's a problem and that's a problem we're solving. And we want to figure out what it is that we need to start doing or sometimes stop doing so that the issue stops occurring in the future. And it really is all about the future. What's done is done. So we have no control over the mistake that happened last week. Last week was very last week. But we do have control over what could happen, what might happen in the future. And of course, unfortunately, that's how most of us learn things in business was through some sort of issue, through some sort of failure, and then we grew. But if you have issues like they're a problem, they shouldn't happen, the people who allowed them need to be dealt with, then you're going to end up with a culture of people trying to stay out of trouble. You're going to end up with a culture of people trying to never have mistakes, which sounds nice, but versus a culture of people willing to try things and learn from their mistakes. But I think if we look in the history of our organizations or your department or my own personal abilities and skills, they all improved the most, the fastest due to an issue. An issue that we were committed never happened again. And when you get pitted against that, like, how do we not have this kind of issue happen again? You start to discover new ways of operating.
So how can leaders apply this process in organizational settings? Is it a formal process? Is it something that someone who is either trained or taken courses or perhaps studied root cause analysis? Because it's not an investigation, it's something very different. It's finding out why it happened, not what happened.
Yeah, and it's interesting why and what is the difference and how about how? I'm simply asking and I'm curious about what do we need to put in place so this doesn't happen again? So I might ask, why did this happen? How did it happen? And I will say, putting it into process is a lot about who we, the leaders, have to be. We have to genuinely be curious and ask a lot of open-ended, curious questions. And because people will want to blame something, they will want to make sure they defend themselves, point some blame somewhere else, try to stay out of trouble, not be the one who takes the fall for something. That's just human nature. Nobody wants to look bad. And then there's another challenge because we leaders, we're paid to know stuff and be decisive. And we come into those conversations quite often like we already know what the issue is. So I say, what happened here? And they say, Molly didn't get back to us. Oh, okay. No, not, oh, okay. You got to keep peeling back the layers of the onion. Then what happened? Oh, and then what happened? Oh, and then what happened? Oh, the shipment didn't get there on time. That's it? That's the end of the story? Why did that happen? Oh, that's curious. And if we were committed that never happen again, what might we do? It's just so easy to take the first couple answers of what happened or how did that go wrong and go, there it is. I don't know, but why that? Why that? And keep peeling back. But it's hard. I got to get myself in kind of a discovery mode. Oh, Gina, you think because you're paid to know, you're the CEO, you probably do know what went wrong. But I've got to literally take that hat off and go, just consider you actually don't know. Like little Ted Lasso there, right? Be curious, not judgmental.
I was going to ask you some common mistakes that leaders make when addressing this issue, but I think you just answered that. In the compliance world, we call it the 5 why rule. You have to ask 5 why questions. You talked about peeling the onion back. I think many of us are familiar with that as well from other parts of our lives. So perhaps understanding you just have to keep peeling it back.
Yeah.
Let's change the focus to creating a culture of accountability. This can be one of the most powerful tools a leader can employ, or even an organization. What's your idea of what accountability looks like in a professional setting, Gina?
I think what you would see, what I've seen commonly, like a common thread, is that people are managing up. That's kind of a symptom. If I was just a fly on the wall watching a meeting happen, I would say, oh, this is a really, wow, look at all this accountability. When people are managing up, so people are saying what they will and won't be doing and when things will be done, and they're proactively letting their manager know what is done and what is not done. And that's pretty rare because in a meeting, people are like, I'm working on it. Yeah, you following up on that? Uh huh. But they're not, I'm going to have this resolved by Monday. And I'll let you know on Monday that this got done. And then if that's in jeopardy of not getting done, they tell you don't show up on Monday and then find out it didn't get done, plus a lot of really good reasons why it didn't get done. So when you're what it looks like is people are proactively managing up. They're going to their boss. They're saying when something's going to be done. They're saying if there's an issue with it getting done on time. And all the talk in an organization like that is a lot about accomplishment. Here's what I'm taking on. Here's what I'll be doing. Here's what I'll be producing. There's not a lot of yammering about blame and there's no long saga about why something didn't get done. This is not going to be done on time on Friday and I'm going to get to it on Monday. Is that going to be a problem for anybody here? I'm owning that project and that accountability all the way, such that I'm actually curious. Might that be a problem for you if that didn't get done on Monday until Monday? Might that be a problem for you if that doesn't get done till Monday? Because when you're being accountable, you're not afraid, oh, I'll just try to get it done on Monday and maybe nobody will notice it got done late, or maybe there'll be no issue and I can duck, right? I can duck or dodge anything bad. So that's a
So,
little flavor of what it looks like in a professional setting, or what it can look like.
so would accountability be it's 4:58 p.m. Central Time. I said Monday, and there it is. What's the problem?
I don't understand. Say that again.
Yeah, I said Monday. It's 4:58 p.m. I've delivered it on Monday. I did what I said I was going to do. What's the issue?
Right. You mean if there's a bigger problem that you're involved in?
If I say Monday and I give it to someone 1 minute before the close of business and they can't use whatever item I've been working on and I'm responsible for.
Oh, I got it. I understand. Yeah. So it's unworkable, right? So then there'd be another lesson learned for the future called, okay, that didn't actually fulfill our ultimate intention, right? Our ultimate intention sounds like it was something different than you're going to get that done, like you said, 2 minutes before the end of the day. And I, as the manager in the future, then wouldn't accept somebody saying to me, I'm going to get that done Monday. I would say, oh, is that going to be by 2? If the time of the day matters. And sometimes it really does. And so what do you mean by that? Because when I'm the boss, I think the other thing is I'm ultimately accountable and this person is supporting my initiatives versus I got half the pie, they got half the pie. I hope they don't screw up their half. if they work for me, if they work in my department or in my business, and I consider myself wholly accountable, I'm very grateful and appreciative for their work because ultimately it's on me. Not Joe didn't do his job. I know, but his job is part of your accountability. That's where it gets interesting.
So you talked about this quite extensively in our first podcast, and I wanted to maybe take what I learned from you then and explore the following. Can you start having those conversations about Athena's expectations literally in the hiring process? So if someone comes in for an interview or they have a remote interview, can you start literally even before you hire them and then on the onboarding say, these are our expectations? Is that something you routinely do or would advocate?
You bet. Absolutely. Why not? And demonstrate it in the interview process and in the onboarding process, right? So, one way you cause accountability is you're always asking people when. When will that be complete? When will that be done? And I would find ways to put that into the interview process, especially if your interview process, which I think is really important to have sort of a longer interview process than you want, right? Because in the first couple conversations, people are perfect. They are shiny and they have all the right answers. But if there's some email then exchange after that, and maybe some text exchange after that, and then there's another meeting or two after that, now you start to see this person's real colors. And in that process, find times to say, when will you get back to us about that? When can you let us know about that? And then track it. Are these people who do what they say they're going to do? And then, yes, I would blatantly say, listen, in our culture, everybody manages up and everybody says what they're going to do. And everybody's really accountable for it. Like they are the first one. I never have to find out there's a problem. All my people come to me if there's a problem. They have that level of confidence. We just want you to know that. And that may or may not be a good fit for you. And I would also offer up, are you going to develop people in that? You know, in our company, we do. We say, listen, we're a heavy coaching and development company. We will coach and develop you in that. If you do not like coaching, you're not going to be very comfortable here. And definitely in the onboarding process, I would be demonstrating right off the bat that we always ask you when something's going to be done, and you say, and you either deliver or you have the guts to come to us and say, sorry, that's going to be a day late.
Let me focus or change the focus just a little bit to delegating, and specifically delegating without abdicating responsibility. And I'll start this section with a personal anecdote. I had a lawyer I worked for once, and if I would bring an issue or a topic or a problem to him, he had a brilliant delegation strategy, which involved a sticky notepad and him writing the two words on it, please handle, and giving it to me. And that was it. No more conversation. Whatever the issue was, I could deliver him the final work product. That doesn't strike me as delegating without abdicating responsibility. So, how can you do what you suggest and see as so important in an organization?
Yeah, I call that sometimes the dump and run, right? Sometimes you want to say, I gave it to Joe. Okay, but doesn't Joe work for you? Aren't you accountable for Joe's work? So it's again, I think, a mental shift called this person I have delegated to is my partner in getting something done that my department, my company, my division is accountable for. And if you consider yourself accountable for their success, you're going to delegate in a way that is a partnership. You know, when I delegate, I make sure people know this is now yours. This belongs to you now. Okay. Now I'm your resource. So, tables turned. How can I help? What questions do you have about what I just gave you? What do you need from me? Oh, you don't know? Okay, let me know next time we talk. I'm available, but this is yours. And then I would ask, when is this going to be done? Things like that. So they're very clear. This is theirs. But when I ask questions like, what do you need? When will this be done? This causes them to think. They have to do the thinking versus I did the thinking, I dumped it on your desk, now go. They have to go, oh, what questions do I have? When do I think I can get this done? What do I need from you? I don't know. I have to now think about that. So it's what I would call delegating thinking. And again, if I consider myself accountable for this person's success, I'm genuinely curious. What do they need? If I just say get it done, then I go back to my desk and hope.
Hope is not a business strategy.
That's what I've heard too.
I had another boss who said when he would give me an assignment, all I want is the finished product. Don't come to me with an interim answer. Don't come to me with more questions. Tell me the answer and give it to me in final form. And I was always very frustrated by that because I felt a more collaborative process would have delivered a better product by the end of the day. So, how can you delegate while maintaining proper oversight?
Yeah. I think that especially for the longer project, I want to know the milestones, right? If this is a 10-step project, let's say, I want to hear from this person somewhere around step 3. I want to see if they're pointed in the right direction. And no, I do not want my time wasted and I don't want to have a long conversation about it. But I do want to know, where are you at next Tuesday? And if you're not exactly sure when they should be at step 3, I'll just pick a checkpoint. I'll say, next Tuesday, tell me where you're at, because I don't know where they should be either. Sometimes it's very complicated. But once I know where they're at on Tuesday, then I can go, okay, now let's build an actual timeline and when you should check in with me. And sometimes I don't want to be bothered. I'll just say, send me a text, send me a Slack message. I want to know where you're at by end of day this day, by end of day this day, and by end of day this day. Because as a worker, if you've got to tell your boss where you're at by the end of day Thursday, you're going to be pretty darn productive on Thursday, because you don't want to go to your boss and say, I haven't gotten to it yet. Right. So I really like putting in checkpoints, but that doesn't mean we have to have a meeting. I don't want to sit down in a meeting where I'm going to get asked a lot of questions. Again, I'm paying this person to think, not ride my mental coattails. So those are a couple of things I do.
One of the unspoken threads I think we have not yet mentioned through the root cause analysis and leadership to creating a culture of accountability and certainly delegating without abdicating responsibility are a series that I'm going to call Trust, Psychological Safety, and Communications. How does trust, psychological safety, and communications really relate to one or all three of these topics?
It's huge. If you're somebody to be feared, then they'll do what your old boss said. You'll go back to your desk, you'll do the best you can, you bring it to your boss, you have no opportunity to ask questions. And that boss is then just hoping that the job got done. And then I suppose maybe it didn't get done right. And then that boss is mad at you. I don't think you're going to stay in that job very long. So, as owners and leaders, people's desire to work in our organization is also a factor. It's very expensive to be replacing staff. And especially with the younger staff these days, right? Partnership is very key. Partnership and mentorship along the way. I always make sure people know I am available for questions. I'm available for questions. I'm available for questions. Why? Because if they bring me a shoddy end project, I'll say, what happened, right? We'll go back into our RCA. What happened? What happened? And somewhere along the way, I'll find out there's something they needed an answer. They needed help. They got stuck. And I can then say, I don't understand why you didn't come to me. I got it. I'm the boss, but I'm also a really great resource. I'm a wealth of knowledge about things concerning my own company. You might come to me. So that creating that partnership and, like you call, psychological safety, I think is so important. And if we are going to work with anybody in the younger generations, we also have to get really good at that. And it doesn't mean coddle them, but we do need to be available for mentoring and what I would call course correcting. Okay, you're close, but you're 3 degrees off. And if you're 3 degrees off and you're in a ship leaving LA and you are trying to go to Tokyo and you're 3 degrees off, you're going to be very far from Tokyo by the time we get across that ocean. So I want to catch them and get them back on course. And it just becomes pretty soon that becomes a culture where people want to work. And when people feel safe, they'll go for it. They'll really give you their very best.
So I've worked in large multinational organizations that were worldwide in scope, but there was always a business unit that just seemed to be a little off. In the energy industry, we always call them, oh, they're the cowboys. That's what the Cowboys do. But I wanted to use that as a backdrop to ask you the following. You have used these strategies with Athena, but I wanted to explore how a compliance officer can use these strategies that you've just articulated and scale a cowboy business unit. If they want to focus on one business unit, a discrete or distinct unit, and use the strategies that you've used at Athena, how could they do something like that? What's in just focusing on one business unit as opposed to 55,000 employees across the world?
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely talk to the head of that unit and start finding out, are they asking, when are they holding people accountable for what they are to do and what they have said they're going to do? And if not, that you just start. Now, it's going to cause ripples. People are not going to like it in the beginning. But if you are fed up and you have this cowboy culture where everybody's doing what they feel like and nobody's accountable to anybody, you got to start somewhere. And the sooner you start, the sooner you'll be through the pain points of people saying, "What? Why are you asking me when that's going to get done? Why are you expecting me to report back to you?" What? Because we're going to create something new here. And here's why we're going to create something new here. And if I was looking to develop leaders in that division or looking to scale, one thing that I recommend, and again, it's scary, but it works, which is to give people a little more responsibility and a little more larger projects than you think they can handle. And then you be the safety net. And in the process, you'll discover how much they really can handle. And sometimes it's more than you think. But I'm trusting you now to hold this, and I'm going to hold you to account for holding this whole division or this whole piece of the pie, and see what happens. Are they going to rise to that occasion or not? I just think sometimes people are squirrely and mischievous, like a teenager, when they're not given enough accountability, frankly. When I look back, when I was sort of burdened with accountability, I sort of just shut up and perform because I don't have time to get squirrely. So sometimes I give people a bigger piece of the pie to manage and see what happens. Worst case scenario, I'm going to take some of it back.
Do you know who George Steinbrenner was?
Yes, I think so.
He's now deceased, but he was the owner of the New York Yankees for many years.
Right.
And I heard him in an interview once say, every employee thinks they give you 100%. But what I have found is they can always do more. And my job as the leader is to push them another 5%, another 10%, because then it begins to compound. Is that a valid leadership strategy within the context of RCA, of accountability, and delegating without abdicating responsibility?
I think so. We want the most out of our people. And it's not because we're just money grubbing, angry business owners. I got to get more out of these people. No, high performers like when you want more out of them. And I don't know what the phrase is, right? When you have 20 minutes to do something, you do it in 20 minutes. When you have 2 hours to do it, you do it in 2 hours. Sometimes I want to give people more accountability because I want to get them more efficient, especially in the lower level work. Stop spending so much time on that. Here, let's go fish for some big fish. Let's get up to something bigger. And it's high performers will rise. And again, you might have to swoop in and save the day every now and then. But I think high performers then are more satisfied, more fulfilled. And especially if they're getting appreciated along the way, if you're just pouring it on and giving them more and more accountability and they're performing, make sure to acknowledge the heck out of them. Absolutely. That's called development, right? And these younger generations are saying, where am I going to go work that I'm going to get developed? Okay, you're going to have to work, but you'll get developed. Yeah.
Say a client or prospective client calls you and says, I've heard you're on the podcast, I've read your stuff, and I want to move towards improving accountability and delegation with my organization. What do you tell a leader that his or her role is in that?
Yeah. If you want to get accountability into your organization, here's the thing, you're accountable. Who's buried in Grant's tomb? Easier said than done. But if you aren't, that you are accountable for all of it, it gets a little crazy. So I'm accountable for everybody on my payroll, all of them. I'm accountable for all of it. Now that can be daunting, but if I am the buck stops with me, then there are going to be questions I am going to ask of my managers that aren't just soft. I'm going to really ask. Like you said, I'm going to ask 5 whys. But at this point, after years of doing it, they know it's coming. So they just come to me. But when you just start, yeah, if somebody comes in and we just start, it starts with you're accountable. So tell me how that last meeting went with the managers. And why did you get bought off by that answer? Do you know they didn't tell you the whole truth? Yeah, I know. You never really. I know, but you tolerate it. So then we have a whole other podcast about the amount that we tolerate. And people, leaders, it's tough to be accountable for it all. And we will sometimes sacrifice, and that looks like tolerating mediocre performance. And why would you do that if you're accountable for it all and you're committed to excellence in your company? Unfortunately, the fish thinks at the head, and it starts with us and we being accountable for it all.
The word sustainability is sometimes seen as a negative in today's political climate, but I want to use it in the following. What are your thoughts on cultivating sustainable leadership practices?
Yeah, I think that comes down to being a human with a human. When I think about the leaders in my company, they've been around as long as they've been there because I've always had their back. Ultimately, if you are just looking for whose fault it is, it's not going to work. But what's sustainable is I'm on this boat with you and we're all rowing this boat together. So I'm grateful for every single stroke you take because we're in it together. So I have to be a better and better leader to lead my leaders. But if I am their true shoulder to shoulder partner, like I'm in this with you, then they come along for the ride with me and they want to lead. And I'll tell you, just like this last quarter was just rough quarter, but we just completed it yesterday, last day of the quarter, and we complete every quarter at the end of the quarter. And we just said, thank God we were in it together. And that's sustainable leadership because even I don't want to lead the troops every day, but we are partners. And there's a lot of different things that feed our partnership, the retreats that we do, the meetings that we have, the completing of issues, not letting issues linger, things like that just make for great relationships. But I think that is what feeds sustainable leadership also.
Gina, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you, find out any more information on Athena Executive Services or the topics we've touched on today, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me, you can find me out on LinkedIn really easily, Gina Cotner. And then my firm provides virtual executive assistant services. And if you want to learn more about that, head out to our website at athenaexecutiveservices.com.
Well, Gina, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to revisit with me, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
Thanks, Tom.